Mother, courage, drives through the bombardment with 50 loaves of bread in her wagon, thinking crazily, maybe I can trade these for the lives of my children. No bread, just stones. This one, a friend gave me when I was going through a rough time. Relatively. It says, God is my rock. On the flip side, the best is yet to be. I want to believe her, but I have a feeling ever since the start of this war, a tidal wave of change has come. So, stones for ballast. On day 6 of the war, day 1 being October 7th, the seeds sown long ago, I listened to a podcast. 2 Israeli Jews whose hearts are broken, Yossi and Daniil. Yossi declares the limit of his moral red line. What would be the farthest Israel could go to prosecute this war against Hamas before crossing the red line into immoral behavior? For me, it's Dresden. Israel must not commit Dresden on Gaza. On day 10, a story catches my eye. One of my new Israeli Facebook friends, Haggai, says that years ago, he traveled to Germany for a conference. The organizer took the group to Dresden. We arrived at a street exhibition with pictures from World War II. We immediately recognized what we saw: carts with bodies. All the feelings and sights I'd been exposed to as a child about the Holocaust awakened. Here's another Holocaust exhibition, we thought. And then the guide told us about the Dresden bombing, which I knew nothing about. And we understood that these are not bodies of Jews, but of Germans. He pointed at the pictures of the carts with the bodies and hoped for empathy from us. We kept quiet. We all thought the same thing: shut up. Carts with corpses is what we grew up on when your people massacred us. We are not able to shed a tear in front of dead Germans. It took me 30 years to feel ashamed I hadn't been empathetic to him at that moment. In recent years, I'd gone back to walking in the hills of Jerusalem. I found myself photographing the remains of Kirbat Luz, Kirbat Al-Mur, Acre, Kirbat Kifarzum, Beitul, and other small Arab villages that were shots were fired by the Jews. The Arabs left in 48. We did not let them return to their homes. These villages disappeared. I've always wondered why it wasn't possible, after we'd won, to let them return. But we didn't do it. Since October 7th, I don't have the courage to go hiking in the mountains anymore, because finally I understand what we felt in our newborn state when attackers crossed the mountain border to kill us. How can we let them back to work here? How do we know which ones walk through the torn fence to kill the cows and to set grenades on the gate? How do we know they won't draw weapons and hurt us? Suddenly it seems clear why in 48 we did not let them return to their homes, even families that hadn't done us wrong. And then I asked myself if maybe they should have been allowed to return because it was their home and they were innocent. And we should try to deal differently with the risks that result. But no, I tell myself, they shouldn't return. And I have a little devil on each shoulder, and it's hilarious. Back and forth they go, they should, they shouldn't. Now, since October 7th, something in me is sealed for their children and their suffering, as if to say we should have a finite measure of empathy, and we need to think about how to divide it. And if I do not seal, I am weak in front of our enemies who are coming to slaughter us. The intensity of the numbness we have when we are under threat after those vile acts happen to us, we are numb to the suffering of innocent others simply because they belong to the same group that brutally murdered our dearest. I admit, by me at least, also a little joy appears. I know also joy appears to them, to those who might not have been sorry for our annihilation. And I have even a little connection to the desire for revenge. And it's clear this is what happens on the other side. Their joy for the 7th of October massacre, their numbness for such a horrific massacre that took place right next door. I search for what this tastes like. And the idea comes that I don't want to raise grandchildren who learn to be innocent, call themselves strong, happy as hell, fantasizing about revenge on innocent people. It tastes like metal in my mouth. Day 16, reports of intelligence failures pile up. The chaos of those early hours, border police fighting in their flip-flops, in their pajamas, slipping through blood, waiting in vain for backup. Citizen activist volunteers on the protest lines 24 hours earlier snap into action, fill in where government failed with food, clothing, shelter for survivors. Fathers and mothers read desperate texts, SOS, GPS coordinates, perform search and rescue in their family cars. My family moved out of New York City 27 years ago to a place where there weren't as many Jews. I brought our menorah into my daughter's elementary school classrooms at Christmas and told the Hanukkah story. We looked for the Jews and we found them in synagogues 40 minutes north to Providence or 30 south to New London. A few days before October 7th, I noticed a woman with a Jewish last name had introduced herself as new to the neighborhood on a popular app. I responded in the thread in public. Hey, are you Jewish? Would you like to meet somewhere sometime? She did. And someone else did too. And by the time we three met, it was day 5 of the war. We commiserate about the massacre. We play Jewish geography. We ask each other if any of our non-Jewish friends had checked in to see how we're doing. A few had, for each of us. One of us, a woman with deep roots in Israel, vehemently denies it can be called an apartheid state. I have such mixed feelings about the Jewish nation state law. None at all about settler violence or the blind eye of this Israeli government. And I want to say, I think she's only partly right. I don't. All 3 of us have ties to the Holocaust. Palestinians who live in Gaza and the West Bank have been cordoned off into 2 opposite organelles inside and adjacent to the organism that is Israel. One, a tiny strip on the edge of the Mediterranean. The other looks like a kidney west of the Jordan River, east of Jerusalem. It's no accident these two populations have been separated, each governed by rival factions, Hamas for Gaza and the Palestinian Authority for the West Bank. But really, Palestinian lives are controlled by Israel via checkpoints, restrictions, a blockade, second-class citizenship, and violence. Palestinian reaction to certain Israeli policies led to various forms of resistance. For example, for 18 months in 2018 and 19, every week, Palestinians on the Gaza border protested. The Great March of Return. Palestinians say they were peaceful protests, Israelis say they were violent. Imagine if 1 million Palestinians had lined up on the border to demand self-determination and to denounce terrorism, and imagine if they had stayed there until they got it. Instead, 3,000 terrorists passed through the fences to massacre as many Jews as they could find. On day 14, a Palestinian American woman stuck in Gaza City visiting her in-laws talked about the missiles starting to rain down. My mother-in-law is sick. She doesn't want to move. She rather die at home. They make crashes like super quick sunrise and sunset. Oh my God, a smell like burnt matches. Look, there are 15 children and babies here, all in one home. The water is running out. What do they want? Do they want to push us into the sea? Then do it, just do it. Al is waiting for death, it's torture. On day 16, Gaza has only 3 days left of fuel for food, water, ventilators. On day 20, the ground invasion begins, and social media posts are getting weird for Jews. I'd stood shoulder to shoulder with a comrade from my local racial justice movement to protest the treatment of a black woman who had been hurt in a racist hate crime. I saw their post, an old-timey map with the word Palestine written all the way across it, implying Israel should not exist. I understand why black and brown people might identify with the Palestinian struggle, but right now, as a Jew, it feels like a family member has been raped, beaten, and left for dead. When you side with my enemy, how can you still be my friend? Let's talk. We can't afford to be enemies. On day 13, good news, Yocheved Lifshitz is returned from the tunnels. Her husband, Oded, not yet. She turned to her Hamas handler and bade him shalom. At her press conference, she said, "We were met by the Hamas chief. I asked him why he wasn't ashamed to do such a thing to people who for years support peace, help the Palestinian citizens, take them to hospitals when they need." He was quiet. He didn't answer. He's a killer, but that son of a bitch, Netanyahu, built Hamas into what it is. There were warnings. The women spotters saw the signs. They reported it to their higher-ups. The men didn't pick up their phones, stayed on vacation. I want to, those girls were killed or kidnapped. They were soldiers. I want to say something about this war. Hamas lost twice. First, they lost the people who are saying, let's have peace, not war. And second, they lost because Hamas knew what Israel would do in return. Hamas put death on Palestinians that day. Day 18. Around the world, empty Shabbat tables are set for hostages. One man, a father whose entire family was kidnapped, takes a plastic chair and a sign and sits outside military headquarters in Tel Aviv. By the next day, thousands have joined him. Who would sacrifice these 240 souls from 30 different countries, including the US, to destroy Hamas? Israel chooses both: eradicate Hamas and gain the return of every single one of the hostages. Some of the photographs of the missing babies are being torn down. Who does that? On day 19, only 1% of sorely needed food, water, fuel, and humanitarian necessities of daily life have entered Gaza. The clock is ticking. On day 20, the director of Israel's Forensic Medicine Institute, the man who received the human remains from the massacre collected by Zaka, this director says, "You want to talk about humanitarian aid? What humanitarian? There are 400 body parts in the morgue. There are no longer whole bodies. 400 human parts we cannot identify. Their families will not be able to give them a dignified burial. Whole families that were burned alive, and therefore there's no one to produce DNA from to identify these bodies." What kind of humanism are you talking about? "3 a.m. Hadassah Hospital. The nursing room. A story from years before 10/7/23. A Jewish Israeli mother holds her baby girl as she struggles to latch on. The other mother in the room, a Palestinian woman from East Jerusalem. She wears a purple hijab, her bloodshot eyes rimmed with somehow perfectly applied kohl, holding her wailing infant. Both mothers are sobbing. I never had this trouble with the older ones. This one's a fighter. All babies are different. Here, Maggie, lift her on a pillow. Express a little on her lip. Let her smell it. Let her taste it. Maybe I should express the rest of the milk on the other side. I can save it in a syringe. You keep nursing. Yeah? I'll do it for you. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay. Here. Try that. Okay, like this. Yes, yes. Ay, ay, ay. That's fine. Easy now. She's not doing it. It's all right. Calm me. Ah! Don't worry. It's a hospital. Once long ago, we lived in a village and we took care of each other. When one mother couldn't nurse, another mother nursed for her. Our children were like her children, and her children were like our children. This is still in our nature. Maybe it's time we let women run things around here. We might just figure it out together. Hmm? At about noon on Sunday, October 8th, 2023, the day after Black Shabbat, I joined the weekly webinar hosted by Palestinian-American Faisal Salah, the founder and director of Palestine Museum US. Faisal had produced the first version of this play in his museum back before 10/7, when it was called Picking Up Stones, an American Jew's Moral Dilemma. In his museum, which is dedicated to telling the story and sharing the culture and history of the Palestinian people through art. Much of the art relates to the struggle. Some kids' paintings. There's one installation, for example, called Sweet 16. Looks like a cake made of M16 bullets. Faisal? The implication is clear. Lots of kids were killed by Israelis. So from October 2020 through October 8th, 2023, via Faisal's weekly webinars, I learned about the Palestinian point of view. I heard authors and I watched films made by Americans, Palestinians, Israelis, whose critiques of Israel documented their conclusion. Israel's origin story, idealistic origin story, is wrong, and everything since 1948 has been wrong, increasingly, for Palestinians. So on October 8th, 2023, the day after, Faisal greeted everyone as usual. A global online audience. He began chatting about a clock he'd seen recently at Amsterdam airport. At first he thought it was an optical illusion. It was a figure of a man behind a lighted clock face who appeared to be erasing the hands of time in real time. How strange, Faisal mused. Anyone ever seen this? Yes, one person explained in the chat box. That's an art installation. And I had my mouth hanging open. Was he going to address what had just happened? What was still happening? He did, finally. By turning to his Palestinian guest, so, Mohammed had his child on his lap. How do you and the people you talk to feel about what's happened? And Faisal translates. He says it's a difficult situation and we wonder what's going to happen next, but people are feeling positive. They feel they have had an opportunity to respond effectively to Israeli attacks and provocation. They feel vindication. As usual, the mainstream media in the West mention nothing about what Israel has done in Gaza, in the West Bank, to provoke these attacks. And my husband Marty calls out from the next room, "What? What is he saying?" Marty walks in. "It's Israel that's been attacked by barbarians, massacring Jews." I know, I'm trying to record. Marty goes out. And the co-host of this webinar, Krista, who's an American Arabic Studies professor and author, she says, "What can you expect but a bursting through after years and years of oppression? That's part of the power of what's happened, symbolically breaking through that wall, the steel fence Israel built that has normalized keeping people in cages. An open-air prison for 17 years without access to food, water, medicine, electricity. Incredibly, Palestinians broke through their wall just as in 1989 when Germans broke through theirs. And what? Is she supporting Hamas or is she standing up for Palestinian rights? I can't tell and I don't ask. Hamas, terrorists. through the fence to slaughter innocent Israelis, mostly Jews, civilians. They shot and burned their way into homes, murdering whole families. A mother and father threw themselves on their teenage son, absorbing the bullets, saving him. They were killed. Another mother and father at one side of the breakfast table, their hands tied behind their backs, their children hands tied too on the other side, breakfast in the middle, gobbled in snatches by men who will kill this family and make them watch each other die. We know this because it was forensically inferred by the man who gently, tenderly collected the human carnage. He found the breakfast bowls and the bodies. A grandfather deliberately sitting alone in his kitchen waiting for bullets, which came. But the murderers thought he was all there was, so they left, sparing the lives of the children and grandchildren hiding in the safe room. Over 300 people at a music festival gunned down while running away. A young woman, the seat of her sweatpants bloodied, forced into the back of the truck. An 85-year-old Holocaust survivor, sitting in the passenger seat of a golf cart, her head held high, driven by a man with a machine gun. A little boy put in the middle of a taunting circle of Palestinian children, all taken hostage. Their fates unknown at the time I write this, day 11. The bloody crib, the bloody car seat. Those are images that remind me, yes, of German history, but no, Krista, not the Berlin Wall. On day 30, the last day I tracked for this play, the dates are a jumble like my stones. The head of Hamas announced at a news conference that these kinds of actions will happen again and again and again. They are actions that remind me of the line from Golda's balcony when she tells King Abdullah of Transjordan that she's familiar with the head of the Arab League's prediction for 1948. This will be a war of extermination. A momentous massacre like the Mongol massacres. I performed Golda's balcony at a New York synagogue 5 days after October 7th. Golda's balcony overlooks the nuclear war room in Israel, buried in the Negev desert. Golda grips the railing, agonizing over whether or not to give the order that might save Israel but could destroy the world. After my performance, an audience member shows me the handkerchief she always carries with her, made of potato sack, given to her by her mother, who had it from her great aunt, who had fought with Menachem Begin against Arabs in 1948. This Jewish mother asks me, how do I talk to my son? He's blocked me. His last text said, don't send me any more posts about dead Israelis. My friends are Palestinians. What do you expect after so many years of oppression and dehumanization? There was a rope around their necks tightening. Hamas cut it. On day 18, I hear voice recordings of Israelis' reactions to the first days after October 7th. A mother from just south of Haifa. She said this. My 17-year-old doesn't care how many children are killed. He says they're all animals and we should just level Gaza. And it scares me for myself and for my kids. What I so despise about the infiltration infiltration and the atrocities committed is that at the core of that was dehumanization. A complete lack of acknowledgement of a human being standing in front of them. Simply unfathomable, unforgivable, horrific. And the last thing I want to be is someone who can't see another human being. I'm scared that in our fear and our trauma, we can't see them as human beings, that we are losing our humanity. The only way Jewish people can live safely in this land is if the other people in this land can live safely as well and are able to thrive. I know that. Our destinies are linked. But I can't find my way back to it. I'm just sitting in this messiness. I don't have any answers. So can you all see the design on my shirt? Can you see what it is? Can you call it out? It's Sisyphus, yes, Sisyphus. And what's inside the rock? Call it? It's a peace sign, of course. It's a peace, harder still, pushing that damn rock uphill. No one can see, there's in teeny tiny letters, it says, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Yeah, all right, Camus. That's a heavy lift. Dress down Fridays at school. Oh wait, I did want to say this story. An easier message might be, what, love your neighbor like yourself? That story goes, a Gentile who wanted to convert dared the Jews to teach him the whole of Torah while standing on one foot. So the first rabbi he asked smacked him over the head with a 2x4. The second rabbi he asked was Hillel, an exceptionally wise man. And Hillel told the Gentile, sure, here it is. That which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow man. That's it. Go learn it. What's so difficult? Dress down Fridays at school. I'm a high school English teacher. I like to wear different slogan t-shirts. See who's paying attention, right? Humankind, be both. Red, white, and blue, RBG. Vote in a variety of languages. Feminist. I wore my homemade Black Lives Matter shirt after George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor were killed. Two public demonstrations, not to school. That would have been too political, against policy. My new Israeli WhatsApp high school friend, Michal, says, everything is political. My ex-husband is a reservist. Even he joined the protest last year. Every week, hundreds of thousands of us. Every week for 10 months straight. Pilots refused to fly over Gaza, committing the atrocities they were ordered to commit. Some infantry refused to follow orders to fire on a Palestinian village. They said, no, we won't do it. You're turning our democracy into a dark, religious theocracy, downgrading human rights, especially women's rights, and we won't let you. We'll turn these protests into Israel's second war of independence. But we turned on a dime. Most of us have the muscle memory of being a soldier, which clicked in at 6:30 a.m. on October 7th. Imagine 20 million Americans who knew someone, or knew someone who knew someone on 9/11. That was us. I try to imagine Would I have run for my life across the killing field at Nova Music Festival? Or would I have knelt in the trees waiting for my death, cowed by terror? A throwback to my childhood Nazi nightmare. They chase me into the house. I hide in a closet. They kick down the front door. I wake up. One of my students asked me on day 7, I think, he asked me, "Hey, Miss Lau, is this a religious war?" And I say, well, if you consider that Hamas and Iran want to wipe Jews off the face of the earth, I guess it is. I did not say that to the student. I said something about a humanitarian nightmare. What is the proportionate response to what Hamas did? So I have my stones for ballast, and I have because I was thinking, as I was teaching on day 15, about the Native American ambassador, some say the peacemaker, the shaman, the prophet, who arrived in a stone boat to declare the Constitution of the Iroquois nation. It was the women who meted out justice, which did not involve killing, a brilliant idea ruined by war and smallpox. Imagine this stone. This is Benny Begin. Imagine he's in Jerusalem. He's at a dig. He picks this stone up out of the rubble 2,600 years after the destruction of the first temple. He deciphers the ancient Hebrew message on it, and with a tear in his eye, he's amazed that he can smell the harvest. Now imagine this stone. The Palestinian wife and mother, call her Fatima. She pulls the stone out of the rubble of her home in Gaza after an Israeli bomb has destroyed it. She's revered as a martyr's mother. She turns to the camera in this documentary film from years before 10/7 and says, "We try to shield our children from the violence, but it's impossible. There is no safe space now. My husband was jailed for 7 years. He's been home for a month. He was just trying to protect the community, the neighborhood, but they came for him yesterday. You see the bullet holes? What's left of this neighborhood? I pray for Allah's mercy. Bismillah, Rahman, Rahim." I feel for her. And I also wonder if her children are indoctrinated to hate Jews as occupiers, murderers, and thieves. If when they're 5, they put on plays about killing Jews. And on the other hand, I wonder if Israeli Jewish kids think all Palestinians are terrorists. My sister's child is 4. She just wrote her daughter's name on her leg. In case. To be a Jew means that you care about that 4-year-old Palestinian as much as you care about the 17-year-old Israeli who doesn't. It's an action. It's a choice. It is Jewish or it is un-Jewish. It's pekuach nefesh. To save a life overrides everything. is tikkun olam, heal the world, fix it. Golda Meir, Israel's fourth prime minister, was a fixer. She wasn't religious. In the early days of the state, she insisted on and worked out a plan that everyone should ration food, water, petrol, because the new state was so poor and at war with the Arabs, and everyone in Israel should be treated equally. Everyone should be equally miserable. A very Jewish idea. But she's scorned by some for her claim that there's no such thing as a Palestinian people. She justifies it by saying, when they were shooting at us from Gaza, they were Egyptians. When shooting at us from the West Bank, they were Jordanians. When shooting at us from the Golan, they were Syrians. Mrs. Meir, I've heard of massacres on both sides. When Golda was asked, Miss Lau, let me ask you a question. Now, what are you doing this for? You're a nice, middle-class, American, liberal, Jewish woman. Why do you need the aggravation? It's 5784 of the Jewish calendar. We've survived persecution, destruction, expulsion, intermarriage. We'll survive this current Israeli government and this current war. Kinahura. Mrs. Meir, I am wrestling over certain Israeli policies now. That's good. It's good to wrestle. It made us who we are. You want policies? I'll give you policy. We absorb Jewish refugees from Arab countries, but the Arab countries won't accept their own refugees. Why must Jews be the only Christians of the world? Mrs. Meir, by bombs or bulldozers or archaeology, Palestinians are pushed out. Example. August 7th, 2022, on the Jewish fasting day of Tisha B'Av, the holiday that commemorates the destruction of the temples, there was an action taken by Jewish settlers in the region of Masafiriata in the occupied West Bank. The settlers wanted to pray in a certain spot. It happened to be in the middle of a Palestinian village. The settlers claimed there had once been a synagogue on that spot. So at 5 a.m., Palestinian families were forcibly told to stay in your homes, while the Jewish settlers took over one Palestinian family's house on that spot where there had supposedly been a synagogue. After the service, the settler children played in the Palestinian family's garden, jumping, dancing, taking selfies with the soldiers. The settler children saw Palestinian children shut up in their own homes with soldiers aiming guns at them. One border police officer chased and screamed after one 3-year-old Palestinian boy, forcing him back inside his own home when he tried to go out to the street. Do you think it's easy for me to do this and then go home to my mother on the weekend and smile? Now I am 10 years old. I tell my mother I want my future to be a martyr, like all martyrs who do well for the homeland. I want liberation. Mrs. Meir, currently all Palestinian residents of Masafiriata are being expelled from their homes. There's destruction of their property. This is a schoolroom from just a week ago. Settler violence is at an all-time high, like white mob lynching during the Jim Crow era. Mrs. Mayer, is this what you and founding father Ben-Gurion had in mind? Who is turning that child into a human bomb? Us or them? If Palestinians lay down their weapons, there will be peace. If Israelis lay down their weapons, there will be massacre. Failure is not my story. I had a part in a great success here. At the expense in blood of others, Mrs. Mayer. Yes, Miss Lau. We paid a price. We are still paying the price for survival in a world that doesn't care whether we live or die. The world said never again. The world has no memory and no conscience. Look, we thought one small patch of land could be partitioned fairly and we could live in peace. But the Arabs attacked us from day one. So we fought and we won. And we grew stronger. And what happens when idealism becomes power? It kills. And if the enemy insists, we have no choice. To save that world you create, how many worlds are you entitled to destroy? I asked that question in October 1973 on my knees. In October 2023, the Prime Minister will give the order to destroy Gaza. Yes, Miss Laub, do you want to be a pious fool? Do you want to sacrifice your identity for others who mourn the fact they didn't wipe us out of existence? Our Independence Day 1948 is their catastrophe. I know what they call it, the Nakba. They still want to wipe us out. They still deny we belong here. They belong to the land too. In the grain of this earth, God put good and evil like two ends of a single stick, or two sides of a stone. So no one picks up one without the other. Why? Sticks and stones, Ms. Laub. People can do one thing or the other with them. Sandra! Yes! Faisal? May I? What? You wanted to... Sure. Golda? Faisal. Faisal? Golda. Mrs. Mayer, I heard that after the Adolf Eichmann trial, you said now we can do whatever we want. Do you know who reported that? Yes, I do. It was Shulamit Aloni, my loyal opposition. Look, we would never break the way Hamas does the rules of war. You thought bringing that war criminal to justice after what Germany did to your people bought you the right to take this land from us forever. We had nothing to do with the Holocaust. Again with the Nakba, the crying over history. History doesn't hand over justice, sir. History watches while people make choices. You are, as Abba Iban said, a people who never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Your sister Shayna's great-grandson was just killed in this war. Fighting? He was in uniform. We can forgive you for killing our children, but we can never forgive you for forcing us to kill yours. Your famous quotes are infuriating. Forcing. Who is forcing the carpet bombing of Gaza? Tell us. What is Israel's ultimate goal here? After emerging from your Zionist vault, you can see the future. At least you were honest when you said that after Eichmann. You are a Jewish supremacist state born of an existential fear of annihilation. Okay. Don't pretend to be a democracy then. And don't gaslight your Jewish fans in America. You can't have it both ways. Marty and I went to Israel in July of 2014, straight into a war, a little war, an operation. We had no idea. All I wanted to do was research for the Golda play, and I wanted to visit with my Israeli cousins there. That little Gaza war killed 71 Israelis and 2,251 Palestinians. It didn't stop my cousins from inviting us to a bat mitzvah and a wedding. I meet my third cousin, Ami, on the dance floor. Ami! What is happening here with the sirens and the rocket attacks and the immediate mobilization? Marty and I saw 100 or more uniformed IDF, young men and women, dancing in a big circle at the Wailing Wall with their guns. It was thrilling and scary. Ami, ma? Say kotel. Say what? We say kotel, not Wailing Wall. Never mind. Look, cousin, every so often we have to do this. Don't worry. Every so often we have to fight a little war. Until 10/7. After 10/7, I learned where those music festival kids ran. To the roadside migunit. The small concrete shelters near the Gaza Strip. The brave young man who kept throwing out the hand grenades. 8 in all that Hamas kept throwing into the migun. Until his arm was blown off and he died. His name was Honor, and he saved the lives of 8 people, which means, according to Torah, that he saved 8 different worlds. There's a woman from Jericho who would meditate with Palestinian children in Gaza. She taught them to dance like the Sufi, little dervishes twirling and twirling, to deal with their daily trauma. She said they didn't have post-traumatic stress because it never leaves them. I was shown the security room, the safe room, the bomb shelter, the miklat, the mamad, the protected space in my second cousin's home outside of Jerusalem. Her teenage son slept in there on a mattress all the time and suffered from PTSD. It never leaves any of them. Mother Courage courage. According to Torah, Abraham's sons, Isaac the Jew and Ishmael the Muslim, built their father's tomb together. And after the last stone was placed, they lived as neighbors. They finally reconciled. As for the daughters, they became mothers, or teachers, or aunties, with or without cats, who teach their children to do everything together, learn together, play together, sing together, clean the beach together, consistently, once a week, because that works. Everyone belongs to the lad. And that makes Sisyphus happy. Imagine, to the beach, to the forest, to the city, to the desert.
The mind is mine, I can choose where I want to be. Both heaven and hell, I know equally well. The choice is up to me. The realm of the mind is mine, I can choose where I want to be. Both heaven and hell, I know equally well. The choice is up to me.
Thank you, kind Fringe audience. Thank you so much for coming to see this very heavy play. Appreciate it. We're on a Fringe festival cycle circuit schedule, so we do need to clean up, but I usually have talkbacks after this. People want to process a little bit. We have like 2 or 3 minutes. Anybody? It's a lot. It's a lot. Exhale. All about the exhale.